Thank you for tuning in. I'm excited to give some context for this video. I think this is the first time I've had anybody put on a video on my channel that didn't have me in it. So I wanted to give some context for it. This is Fiverr, who is a really, I think you'll probably agree, she's a really neat, wonderful, eccentric woman who I've been getting to know, and has since actually become, she just enrolled in the Art of Circling course, which is what I teach, and she's been getting involved with circling. However, before all of that, we got into contact, and I found out that she's a poet and a writer, and has quite an unusual, eccentric, deep mind, and quite a heart as well. So, and she wrote, I love this poem that she wrote, and I got excited about it. So I just said, hey, why don't you read it for me? And then I'll post it on my channel. And then afterwards we'll have a conversation. So you'll get a chance to tune in and find out more about Fiverr and her life and what she's up to. And yeah, I'm excited to have her on, have her part of all of this. So some housekeeping. We have the Art of Circling open for registration. I'm seeing clients one-on-one coaching. If you're interested, email me. All the links for that is below.
Free write, April 26, 2021. Fiverr's creation myth. Thoughts on recognizing the helpfulness of being in relationship with the dying that's constant and ongoing throughout life. Footnote. Everyone in this story gets the pronoun she, and I'm calling God, who is a part of the story, God, because I haven't altogether understood who or what is responsible for all that is. So I begin. It was yet another cold, rainy Sunday afternoon in late November, and God was bored. So he decided to create something rad, something really terrific that could entertain him, that could sing, dance, play music, make hilarious jokes, write beautiful poems, paint things, etc. A free spirit, so to speak. Now God, when it came to creating things, always began with the obvious, which was to reach inside Shahi's pocket, take out one of the energy pods she had kept there, lift it up to about eye level, then mutter something and cast it down to the earth, which is what she did. And soon after the pod landed, it started to unfold into the most beautiful and delightful being that God decided to call being. So at first, everything went according to plan, which was that over a lifetime, being would have experiences that would cause him to gradually unfold, just like a seed turns into a bud and so on. And with each unfolding, being would look up, smile at God, and reflect back the experience in a song or a poem or anything really that was beautiful. And then finally, when the energy in the pod was all used up and being was completely unfolded, and also because God was a type 8 on the Enneagram, being's body would fall away and she'd return to God's pocket. Okay, so like I said, everything was going perfectly. I mean, being was just darling, in fact, so utterly charming that God decided to create another of these beings, and another, and another. Which maybe wasn't such a good idea, because that was exactly when things got messy. Yes, because each one of these and others insisted on God's undivided attention. And when they felt another was getting more of it, they got green with envy and started to bicker and even undermine each other with gratuitous stabs in the back. Enfin, chaos reigned. So God realized some rethinking was in order. But God, an intellectual slacker at heart, predictably opted for the first solution that came to mind, which was to find a 6-foot jute rope and attach an auxiliary being to the original freewheeling one. This rope, mind you, was a special one, because woven between the jute strands was a cable that could transmit energy from the original being, which God, to avoid confusion, renamed being number 1, to the auxiliary being, which God named being number 2. So God's intention was that just enough energy would get transmitted for being number 2 to do his job, which was, first of all, to reestablish order, and second, to manage being number 1's affairs, software updates, whole food deliveries, that sort of thing. And this would free up being number 1 to unfold, delight, and eventually return to God's pocket. But shoot, once again, God's lack of forethought manifested itself, because Shahid accidentally given being number 2 a few too many potentialities. Namely, being number 2 could solve for X. And so, of course, the inevitable happened. Being number 2 became insufferably arrogant and started to resent looking out for being number 1, who he thought was totally silly and an airhead. So one day, being number 2 decided to disregard God and take over completely. And you've probably guessed what happened. Because although being number 2 was indeed very clever, what's also true is that the grandiosity impaired his judgment. Oh yes, being number 2 had forgotten that God, thank God, hadn't endowed him with an independent energy source. And this gave being number 1 just what he needed. That is a whole lot of leverage. So when being number 2 got obsessed with the pursuit of fame, fortune, class, and panache, and last but not least, living forever, well, all being number 1 had to do was get depressed and come down with a life-threatening affliction, which effectively shut the flow of energy down. And that stopped being number 2 dead in his tracks. Yep. But okay, we still have to ask, what was being number 1 really up to? Well, as you will recall, being number 1's whole raison d'etre was to finish unfolding and return to God's pocket. But for the unfolding to happen, she needed important and preferably numinous experiences of the type being number 2 had axed from the schedule. And so being number 1 responded by getting morose and then desperate. And eventually, she cut off being number 2's energy supply and filed for a superlative experience to be delivered immédiatement or else. So being number two was forced to give in and a little sheepishly set out in search of experiences. Now, and of course, true love was being number one's experience of choice, but in being number two's right-angled world, true love was a rare and uncommon occurrence. So, although it wasn't for want of trying, being number two could not deliver true love. And things were tense because being number one was wilting at an alarming rate and not even halfway unfolded. So being number one had to compromise. She agreed to settle for any experience going. Amazon Prime membership, a Rocky Horror Show, mind-altering substances, wingsuit jumping, and barring all else, the chance to perpetrate against self or others ignominious, violent acts. Oh yes, I'm afraid being number one was up for anything with enough shebang to trigger the unfolding required to get back to God's pocket, which was definitely where she wanted to be. What a mess. And not at all what God had intended, to which I say, God, you really should have thought it through better, because at the end of the day, we're the ones dealing with the fallout. I mean, the way things stand, we've got being number two, who thinks she can achieve something incredibly grand, something of such consequences that you will grant to him eternal bodily existence. And to add insult to injury, this same being number two is completely upstaging being number one, who is, in case you haven't noticed, never seen, understood, let alone appreciated, and so remains stunted, having not unfolded fully. And the final straw, ultimately, both are gonna die anyway, somewhere along the line, if not sooner. Jeez. So, to my mind, that is, if I were asked, which I do not expect to be, I'd say being number two should hang to his hat, recognize that eternal bodily existence is not in the cards, that memorialization as a statue in Lincoln Park is the closest to permanence he's going to get, but also to be forewarned that being a statue isn't what it used to be, that there's a strong chance of getting unceremoniously uprooted by a band of banner-bearing feminists, to be replaced next year by a 6-foot-high cast iron replica of the female reproductive system that kids can enter, touch, feel, and explore to give them an inner body experience. I got a little sidetracked there. Never mind. The point is that it has occurred to me that humanity's problem could have something to do with the way we inhabit time, which I think is related to our view of life as a segment of time between 2 points that are birth and death. It's like we think all we've got is this brief window, and we must absolutely achieve something mega extraordinary, something meaningful, something that has a chance of getting recorded in the pantograph and endures a memory. And unbelievably. On some level, we believe this will have the effect of extending our lives into future history. I mean, it's sort of like the photo of Nietzsche, you know, the one with the bushy mustache. It's like when we look at it, we sort of think he beat the system and that he's still alive, but he's not. He's as dead as the God he pronounced to be so. Do you see what I mean? Never mind. What's true is that all this has imposed a very crazy, anxiety-filled life on us because we're running ourselves ragged, trying to reach Lord knows what. And all the while in total denial of the elephant that's plain to see, which is that there's a whole other being that's growing inside of us. That is our dying. And furthermore, this dying is really far more interesting than what we take living for, because it thrives on the encounter with truth, the extraordinary, beauty, the sublime, crazy love, betrayal, and heartbreak. Yes, that too. The dying thrives on suffering. And I'm also thinking, what if my dying is a state that goes on forever and ever? What if it's not bound by time? And what if what I call life, my lifespan, is just a glitch? So if I step out of Chronos time, or at least divide my attention between the struggle to survive and this dying that's unfolding inside me, I get a sense of what eternity is like. And the point is, if I can just be aware of this dying, I get into Kairos time. So it's like getting really close to the dying reveals eternity. No, sorry, that's wrong. Because things like eternity can't be revealed. I can just experience the eternal. Like I can be suspended, held, cradled by the eternal. And it's actually far more simple to get there than I think. It's just a question of arresting the future, of just being still enough to hear the water drip from the tap, to hear the cat breathe as he sleeps, unperturbed by a death that's coming, not yet. And to hear also the thousand sounds that fill what these days I take for quiet. I like that line. Who wrote that line? I don't know. But I think it's why I want to live with a keen awareness of the dying that's inside me, that's there, has always been, and always will be.